Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the ML Hackathon webinar session. We're waiting for a couple of more people to join us before we get started proper. But in the meantime, we have Japheth with us. Is a machine learning engineer at Extended Solutions and Extended Networks rather, and is going to be taking us through the data sets and providing insights basically on ways that we can implement other use cases of the hackathon. And I'd like to commend everybody that has been with us since the beginning. And we'll be going through the submissions, the first submission that you made, and we'll be getting back with reviews and basically creating a ranking system so other team members will know if they need to buckle up or they're doing just fine. So we'll just give it 2 minutes now, then we'll start proper. Okay, without further ado, I'll just let Japhet start. So make sure you keep your questions and any other thing that you might have, any other concern that you might have, because would be you have the opportunity to ask Japhet. Also remember that you're not allowed to share sensitive information concerning extended network since this call is streamed. So Japhet.
Well, so good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Dara, and thank you for giving me the floor. Okay, like I was saying, good afternoon, everybody, and once more, thank you, Dara, for giving me the floor. So, basically, I think the aim of this webinar is to provide a general understanding and of the data sets, and if anyone who have find and if there's anyone who found any challenges in understanding the data set that have been shared for the purpose of the hackathon. So we'll be waiting for the questions at the end of my presentation, and Meanwhile, I'm going to try my best and post my the best I can to share with all of you the basic understanding of the data set. So first thing, going to share my screen. I'm going to share my screen. Share screen. I'm not very used to this thing. The window, entire screen. Okay. So I don't know. Can you guys see my screen? Can you guys see my screen, please?
Hello, Jafet. I can't. There's a present button just beside the settings icon.
No, I already started sharing. So it's actually showing me stop sharing because I've already started sharing. I don't know if it's a network issue, but normally it should.
Okay, 1 second. I'd rectify that real quick.
Okay, let me just stop sharing and start right back.
Hello, Jafet. I already resolved it, so you can share again. Then to show.
Yeah, I stopped the sharing, so I will try you once more. So, resume to share screen.
Hello, Jafet. Have you started?
Don't bother, Dara. I'm online. I can hear you. Let me just share this thing. Okay, entire screen. I want to believe that now we are good, right?
Yes, we are. You're streaming now.
Okay, thank you. So, diving deep, the first thing you have to notice about the data set is that the data sets are actually logs, logs of the logs of the different hub sites that have been shared to you. So basically the hub sites are those sites which are powering the installations, and you can have generators, you can have solar panels, you can have batteries, and also the most important, the grid. But now, since the grid is not reliable at 100% and on every areas, that's why now the hub site are also equipped with secondary energy. Secondary power capabilities such as the grid and the batteries. So the first thing you have to notice about the data set is that the data set, this first row, the first row of the data sets, the first row of the data set is not actually is basically the device, because we used to call them device by convention. So for each of these device, you will have another row here which will now have the properties of each of the device. So let me show you oh, another I think this is it here. Okay. Dara, hello, Dara.
Yes, Japhet.
Okay. I'm not very sure about the network, but can you help me with to know if are you saying the new sheet I just updated? I'm just displaying on the screen.
Yes, I can see Japhet.
Was okay. Now I was able to zoom it. Okay. Now, so for these are the different device for most of this is the data set. These are the device for a data set of one of those sites or a combination of them. So you can have the gateway, you can have the VBus system, you can have you can have the battery monitor, you can have the battery monitor, you can have the tank, and then you have the system overview. So as you can guess, the tank will display you the different parameters which are specific to the tank. Like one of the requirement of the or the acceptance criteria of the challenge is to be able to predict the diesel level. So in order to predict that, this is a very the tank and its different values, which are the tank level, the remaining fluid, or the tank status, can be very critical for the prediction of the diesel level. Now, the battery monitor is a device which display the logs which are specific to the battery. Note that not every site are equipped with batteries, so don't find it a surprise that if you open one of the data sets and you don't find this device, which is a battery monitor. But for the sites which are equipped with battery and those are actually functioning with those, you are more likely to see the battery monitor among the devices. And now the VE bus system is a very tricky one because the VE bus system is not actually a power. It's not actually a powering device like the generator or the battery or the solar panels, but it will mostly give you an overview of how the system is functioning because the VE bus system and the system overview here will have some depending on the time and depending on what power source is powering the hub site at the moment. They may have similar similar values. So when working with one of these data sets, if you are focusing, I think one of the first requirement is to be able to predict the is to be able to be predict the power. In case you want to predict the power, then something that is going to be a key should be the output power, because I think the output power is the actual power that is used by the site. The output power is actually the power that is being used by the site at the moment. So in case you want to be predict that, you have to focus on each phase you have to take into consideration the output power or the output current and voltage of each of the phases. And we all know that power is actually a function of current and voltage. Please excuse me for the background noise. So the power is actually a function of current and voltage. Wow. So um, the we all know that power is a function of current and voltage. So there's one thing which we have discovered about this data test is that once you use the current and voltage at any moment, the product of those will always give you the power consumption. And there is one thing, independent of what of the power source on which the site is operating. If the site is operating on battery or if the site is operating on grid, it doesn't change anything to the power it has to be using. Because let me take a look. Let me take a look at something. Let me take a look. This. So this doesn't seem to be the right data set. Okay. How are we going to work on that? How are we going to work on that? Because so okay. So well, I'll just get back from what I was saying. So well, as you mentioned before, no matter the device on what the site is operating, it doesn't change anything to the expected power consumption of the site. But now, if you want to be able to predict the power, you have to take into consideration the output power, the output current, and then the output voltage. If you want, you can also take into consideration the output power of each line. Now, you may see here 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Each of the time you see this 1, 2, 3, it just refers to the line itself, because the inverters which are powering the different side have three phases. So and equipment are connected to some of these to each of these phases according to the engineer's judgment. So the combined power consumption on each phase, when you combine the combined power consumption, or the cumulative power consumption of each phase, and when you add all of them, it will be equivalent to the total power consumption of the site on that very day. The second aspect of the challenge is to be able to predict the downtime. What I wanted to show on the Please give me a moment, guys. I'm very sorry. Please give me a few 5 minutes time to settle things down beside me.
Okay, while we'll be waiting for Jafet to get settled, he actually mentioned I was on the road, and there was a couple of other problems. But while we're waiting, I'd like us to get our questions ready, because I know a couple of us have had some questions that even I couldn't answer, and we've usually had to just try to Remy is not on now. Remy is also a staff at Extended Networks. I'd like everybody to just get their questions ready. Then, in the meantime, you can also talk about your experience um, with the hackathon so far. We've seen a couple of submissions already, at least four submissions now, which is pretty impressive compared. I mean, considering the fact that we're already in session and everybody's like trying to do school with other things. So yeah, in the chat you can just drop your questions or drop your feedback. How has the hackathon been so far? What are your challenges? Let's talk about it.
Okay, guys. Um, Hello. So, I am back. I think I try to calm down the environment beside around me. So I'm going to quickly resume with the presentation. Dara, can you help me to check if everybody can see my screen? Okay, I think it's okay now.
Hello.
Hello, is it okay?
Yes, it is, Japheth. Welcome back.
Yeah. So can you see my screen?
We can.
Hello, hello. Hello? Hello?
Hello, Japheth, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay, I was saying I was welcoming you back and telling you that we were seeing your screen. I can see your screen, Japheth.
Okay, good. So, and the second acceptance criteria of the challenge is to be able to predict downtime. There's one interesting thing if you went through the data set is that the data set is never functioning. In fact, the hub sites are never being powered by more than two power sources at a time. So this is one of the data sets that I've been working on. And if you notice the system overview is the one which has which shows the power consumed by the power produced and power consumed by the grid and the generator, the genset. And if you notice, for each of the three lines, when the grid is active, the genset is never on. The genset is only on when the grid is inactive. So whenever here should be the genset. Whenever the genset is inactive, so whenever the genset is active, then the grid will be inactive, and this continues like that. So no matter at any moment in a hub site, it's never powered by more than one power source. So either the grid, either the genset, and or the solar or the battery is on. And so, if you want to be able to predict the downtime, the most obvious, the most not the most obvious, but it's logical to think that the site is down when none of the none of the power source is active. So the site is down when the grid is down, when the genset is not on, or when the solar or when the batteries are not on, or the battery are down. So, and then the last one was the genset. So the gen set the diesel level. So the diesel level is related to a device called the tank. The diesel level is related to a device called the tank. So it's related to a device called the tank, and the tank has these specific fields. The tank level, as I mentioned before, the remaining field, and the tank stations, which which are the key parameters when you want to predict the diesel level, or the diesel rate of consumption. Then so but now there is one thing with this that I wanted to show you with this device called the system overview. As I mentioned before, the system overview and the VEBOS system are not actual physical devices, but you may see them as logical devices, because for the case of the system overview, the system overview will show you the state of the grid, and it will also show you the state of the genset. But now, the voltage and the current of the system overview will always be the same as either the grid, the voltage of the genset, or the voltage of the grid, if one of them is active. So what the system overview does, if it what the system overview does, it takes the most the most the most important it displays the most important values of the system, depending of the device, depending on the power source, actually the power source per se. Function of the battery current. So I will try to dislocate. Okay, now I will now go over each of the devices one by one, and then the different fields, which the different parameters which made up, which constitute them. So for the V-bus system, as I mentioned, you have the input voltage, and then you have the input current, you have the input frequency, you have the input power, you have the output voltage, you have the output current, and then you have the output frequency. Now, as I mentioned before, whenever you see one, two, and three, the one, two, and three you see refers to the different phase, to a specific phase of the inverter. And then the voltage and the current of the VE bus system will depend, or will be the same voltage of the grid or the genset or the battery, depending of the equipment which is currently on. So it's not specific to any device, to any power source in particular, but it depends on the power source which is on at that specific moment. And the field that I'm mentioning, they are actually, all of them are numerical fields, like the voltage or power. They are actually numerical fields. And then you can have values such as the temperature on line one, the low battery on line one, or the overload. Overload is actually a values like overloads is actually an alarm, and this data set, the you might have noticed both numerical and categorical values. So we have been focusing on the numerical values, but the categorical value might also be important depending on the implementation that you are choosing. And then you have now the battery. We switch to the battery monitor. The battery monitor, naturally, it has the voltage, it will have its current, the consumed ampere hours, the state of charge, which is a categorical variable, the time to go, which is a thing numerical, and other parameters. Note that all of these parameters are not actually, might not, you are not obliged to use all of these parameters when doing your implementation, because remember that we are calling these data sets, but these data sets are not data sets per se in a data science point of view, but they are actually logs. And in order to be able to in order to be able, with a machine learning implementation working on these data sets, on these logs, you will have to be able to extract, or to extract the data set, to extract the meaningful information from the logs via data, how do you call it again, feature engineering. Then you have the tank that I've already discussed about, and now the system overview. The system overview, the most important thing in the system overview here currently is the grids and the genset. The grid and the genset, basically. Now, because the grid and the genset are the actual equipment. Meanwhile, the other values, the other features of the system overview will depend on the element which is on. For example, let me explain. This row 89 specifically, you will have the AC consumption line 1, AC consumption line 2, AC consumption line 3. Under the description, here I put same as the VE bus output power line 1, output power line 2, output power line 3, which means that at this moment in time, what I noticed about the data set was that the AC consumption and the output power of the system. The AC consumption of the system overview was the same thing as the output power of the VE bus system. Basically, that is the observation we made while plotting the different curves in order to analyze the different features. But now, as I mentioned previously, this AC consumption is independent of whether the system is operating on grid or on genset, because it can be the AC consumption while the system is operating on grid, and it can also be the AC consumption while the system is operating on genset or battery, depending on which equipment or depending on which device is powering the hub site at the moment. So these locks are very, very, very kind of tricky. That is why I advise to mainly focus on the genset, the grid, the tank, and the battery. And if you focus on the system overview, don't focus on the and if you use a system overview, you are not obliged to use the VE bus system and vice versa, because most of the time the voltage and the current of each of those systems will only be will always be the same values, will always be the same thing, depending on the device which is actually powering the hub side. And in fact, the values of the VE bus system are actually a subset of the system overview, because as the system overview says, it's like a general look of the system. So you can look at the system overview and then forget about the other all the other devices, because the system overview will give you some insight on the grid, it will give you some insight on the genset, it will give you insight on the power consumption, because the cumulative of the power consumption of this system overview will be equivalent for the equivalent to the power consumed by the displayed by the virtual by the VE bus system, maybe at the end of the day or for a whole week. So they basically display the same information, and it also applies to the battery. The battery consume ampere hours and the battery time to go. I think here is mentioned that is the same as the battery monitor, meaning that this battery time to go is actually the same value as the battery monitor at battery. I think it should be somewhere around here. Time to go. So, 62 year, the battery monitor and the parameter time to go is the same thing as the system overview battery time to go, because these locks are configured in the way that are configured by the site the site analyst. So they are the one who configure how the locks actually look like. So it's possible that you enter a data set and you find a data set completely different from and you find fields or a configuration which is completely different from other locks, because they have not been configured the same way. But no matter how they have been configured, there will always be these recurrent patterns relative to the powering devices, which to the power devices, which are the grid genset battery or solar at the same time. So I think for now, I took considerable amount of time. So if there is any question, let us just quickly go through them, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Jafet, for that. Our questions can start coming in now because we've actually um, come past the speculated time. So please drop your questions in the chat. I know you have questions.
So if there are any question, as Dara mentioned previously, I hoping that you have been writing down your question. So can just quickly drop. You can just drop them in the chat, and we go over them quickly.
Okay, there's a question from Oluwakayode Adele. He said he's asking you to speak more about the difference between tank level and tank remaining fluid.
Okay. So thank you for the question. The difference between tank level and tank remaining fluid. Basically, these are actually redundant. So let's just take a look at the data set that I currently have. Tank, tank, tank status, tank remaining fluid. Voila. As you can see, the tank level is actually the tank level. Like, I don't know, it's just redundant because it's kind of not necessary. But so you have the tank level is basically the maximum capacity of the tank actually. But now the remaining fluid will be, as it implies, like the amount of fuel which is left in the tank in meter cube. And you see here the unit of measurement. Okay, there's one thing that I've not mentioned is that the first row, like row one of the data set, represent the different devices as we called them earlier. Row two will refer to the specific parameter for each of the devices. For example, here the device is tank, and then the parameter is what? The tank level. And then the third row is a unit of measurement. Not everything have units of measurement. Of course, categorical values will not have units of measurement. And coming back to the question, the tank level is unit of measurement is actually in meter cube. So that is what we are seeing here. And then the tank level, the maximum tank capacity, that's what it is. And then the remaining fluid is just the remaining amount of fuel in the tank. So when the tank is full or is like 100%, let's say that the maximum tank capacity of this one is 17 meter cube. The tank will be full when the remaining fluid is 17. But here we see that the remaining fluid is 0.11, so we can assume that the tank is almost empty. Oh. Okay, excuse me. I will come back again to that question. I thought I would. I forgot that I wasn't sharing my screen.
Okay. Next
I'll come back
question is
again to
me. Yeah. So Mimi said please, when did you say downtime occurs again? I'm sure you said it's when the all the output levels are zero. But if you can explain it in more details, it will be good.
that. Okay, can you see my screen? The best way to explain that will be if they will be able to see my screen, because I will just show the logs. Okay, I think it's okay now.
Yes, we can
Ola,
see
will you
your screen.
confirm? Okay, great. Okay, but let me just come back to the previous question. The tank, this is a tank here. This is a tank here. This is a tank here that I've highlighted. So I mentioned that for the first row in the data set, for in not in the logs actually, the first row represents the device, and we have seen the different device before, which are the tank, the system overview, the VIC system, and so on. The second row will represent the parameters of a specific device. In our case here, since we are focusing on the tank, you see that here for the tank, you have the tank level, one parameter, and then you have the tank remaining fluid, another parameter. The third row will represent now the unit of measurement. In this case, the unit of measurement is in meter cube, as is being mentioned here. And now for categorical variables within the data set, Categorical variables, of course, they don't have units of measurement. Of course, they don't have units of measurement due to their categorical nature. And so here, the tank level, we see that it's 17 and it almost never change because physically a tank, the capacity of the tank like cannot change. In this case, it's 17 meter cube. And now the tank remaining fluid here is 0.01, is 0.111, which let us assume that the tank is almost empty, because the ideal case if the tank were full will be that the tank remaining fluid is equals to the tank level, which will be 17 meter cube. And now I think that was the first question. Just wanted to come back to it while sharing my screen. So excuse me for that mistake. Ola, I'm going to answer the second question. We say that should explain when the downtime occurs again. That was it.
Yes, it was.
Okay, so great. Let's check out the grid. So this is the grids. Yeah, naturally, like you have the grids powering. You have the grids. Let me try genset. It's more proper. Okay, now can you see this part? Grid line one, grid line two, grid line three, genset line one, genset line two, genset line three. Ola, just confirm.
Yes, I can see the
Um,
column.
Dara. Okay, great. So during the presentation, I mentioned earlier that no matter the moment at which you look at you inspect the logs, like this, each website can never be powered by more than one device at the time, meaning that it cannot be powered by the grid and the genset at the same time. It cannot be powered by the genset or the battery at the same time. So there will always be one device which is powering the sites. And now, when you take a look at this, the grid line one, grid line two, grid line three, remember that the lines are just the faces of the inverter. You will notice that whenever the grid is active, whenever the disk is active, for example, here we have 7,000 watts at row 4. Grid line 1, we have 7,000, all 7,900 watts. Whenever it is powered or whenever the grid is active, the genset is always off. Like this null values just infer that the genset is actually off, it's not operational. So, but if we scroll again down the data set, you will notice something. You will notice that whenever the genset is active, this is the genset line 1, line 2, and line 3. Whenever the genset is active, the grid is inactive. So we can continue. And the same thing here. Whenever the genset is active, the grid will always be inactive. So upon this analysis, we assume that when a site is down, with respect to when the site is down, when there is no power, when there is no power source, with respect to the powering devices, it just means that all of the devices are inactive, all of the devices are down, meaning that the grid is not functional, the genset is not operational, the battery are also low or not operational, and then same thing for the solar. So you will just have to look at the power that they delivered, and if you see this null, depending on the IDE that you open or the library that you have, it can be null or none. It all depends, or even none, not a value. So when there is downtime, we assume that all of those devices are just off. None of them is functional. That's what we assume. And it actually makes sense somehow. Dara, is that okay? Hello?
Hello, Jafet. I'll be going to the next question now.
Okay.
Chisom was asking what device the VBOS system is connected to. I think that's a more hardware related question, and
Mm,
I think
okay. What is the
probably just
question
looking for
again?
insight and
Not really.
something
I
you
will
can.
answer the. I will try to answer the
He
question
said,
if it's
"What
possible.
device?"
Okay. What device is a VE bus system connected to? Like I mentioned previously, the configuration of the locks is determined by or is done by the site analyst. So they might decide that they connect they connect the genset to the VE bus system, let's say, and they can do so for the battery. That's why I asked that. I requested that if you are working, advise that if you are working with the system overview, work with the system overview, but also taking note of which device is powering the site at the moment. If you are not working with the system overview, you can work with the VE bus system because both of them will give a global view of the system depending on how the logs is configured. So the question will depends of a specific data set because you might see the some field present in one log file for in the log files for a specific hub site, but now those fields are absent in another one. So there's no specific device. It just depends on how the logs are configured, and it also depends on the hub size
Okay,
specifically.
okay. Kayode has an observation. He said the tank level wasn't constant, but was varied up to 100 millimeters cube in the data set. I'm guessing that's an outlier in the data set. But if if it's of any relevance, I just say you should take it into consideration while building your model. But if you notice that it's not something that you need, I suggest you just drop it. So
Okay.
if
The-
we
Is that a question, Ola?
okay, Jafet.
Is that the question, Dara? Like the tank level wasn't
I
constant, but
don't.
varied up to 100 meter cube in the data set.
Yeah, I'm guessing it was just an observation.
Okay, because it's actually in line with what I said. Because the tank level and the tank remaining fluid, yeah, it depends on the data sets. But let me take a look at it again. Tank, trying to answer every question. Okay, like for example, this one is constant 17 and then 18, 19. Okay, good. Very nice observation. Actually, the tank level is in terms of percentage. Very good observation. Thing is very good observation. The tank level is in terms of percentage. Percentage is not the tank. I mistook it for the tank maximum capacity because on one data set they mentioned the tank maximum capacity and it was something which was constant. But here it's in terms of percentage. The tank level here is in terms of percentage. That is why it varies up to 100, up to 100. Normally it should be in terms of percentage. Is it? No, it's not in terms of percentage. It's not in terms of percentage. Because I remember that when I was working with the diesel level, I had this issue with the tank remaining fluid and the tank level because they mentioned that both of these roads, both of both of them, their units of measurement is meter cube. but it's not actually in line with it's not actually in line with the actual values when you compare the actual physical values. Because if here is 100%, no, I'm actually right. I'm actually right. So it's in terms the tank level is in terms of percentage, and then the remaining fluid is the fluid which is just the actual remaining fluid. I think we can even do that calculation together. Can do this calculation together because calculator, we saw that when the tank is at 100, the maximum capacity is 0.65. So normally when it's 17, it should be 17%, 17 divided by 17. It should be 0.011. No, it doesn't give it. It doesn't give it. Doesn't give it. Doesn't give it one. The remaining fluid 17, 69, 100. Moment, please. Okay. So it will have to be 0.65 times 17 divided by 100. So, and it will give us this value here. So actually, the tank level is in terms of percentage, and the tank remaining fluid is in terms of meter cube. So this unit of measurement here is an error, it's a configuration error because the actual unit of measurement is percentage. So, and this is why when the tank is at 100%, the maximum capacity is the maximum capacity. Okay, that is why when the tank is at 100%, the the tank remaining fluids. Let me just check. Forgot the row. The tank remaining fluids. Oh la la. Okay, this is it here. So when the tank is at 100%, the tank remaining fluid is 0.65 meter cube, and 17% of that is actually 17% of that is 0.11, which is almost the same as what we are seeing here on O4, that 17% is 0.11 meter cube. Dara, have you answered that question now? Hello? Hello? Okay. So, and now, please, what is the webinar? Where is the webinar recorded? Kindly help with the recording. Hello, Hadim. The file will be shared with the hackathon. Looking for another question. Okay, please, can you shed more light on the active input column? So, the active input column, active inputs, the active input column, active input column, active input column, AC input 2, AC AC input one, AC input two. From what I remember, one of the engineers one mentioned that is related to the faces, to the face which is currently active. But I am not very sure. I wasn't very sure of that because when we looked at the logs, it's possible for all of the faces to be active at the same time. But now, if it means that one face is active and the other face is not active, I'm not very sure about it. And because of that, it's a in terms of reliability, it's not a column that I will advise to if you want if you is because I'm guessing that the person who asked the question is because they thought that active input will be like is the generator active, is the battery active, is a grid active, because that is the first thing that came to my mind when I got in contact with when I explored the data set, but that is not actually the case. And per the answer that I received last time, which was that is it shows the phase which is currently active. I won't say that I won't completely agree with that. And in terms of reliability, um, I won't advise anybody to focus if they are machine learning implementation on that field. Okay. Is there a way to tack? Is there a is there a time when the tank is refilled going through the tank level? It doesn't decrease informally. Sometimes in a day it decreases and increases again with respect to predicting the diesel consumption. Mm, that question, I'm not sure there's a specific time at which the time are refilled, because the time are refilled with respect to the requirement. So suppose that you have a site which is operating on grid and and genset. Naturally, the main power source will be the grid. So when the grid fails, what will the site technician do? The site technician will then put on the genset in the case that it's not automatic. And now, depending on the consumption, he may need to refill the he may need to refill the tank when the capacity is below the threshold. So there's no specific time at which they are refilled, and it's normal that when exploring the data set, you see the tank's value actually increasing and decreasing because it increased when it's being refilled, and it's only refilled when, and most of the time it's refilled when it is below the threshold value, let's say 10% or 20%, to prevent downtime, prevent downtime due to diesel shortage. So any other question? Well, please, is there any other question? Feel free to ask a question for in case you explore the data set. Feel free, and then we try to answer the question together.